What's up everybody, this is Lily Thompson. I'm finally back with another video for you guys. And although there's a lot of craziness going on in the world, I want to share some good news with you guys that I finally officially closed on my first duplex, my first investment property, which I'll be house hacking. If you've seen my overview on how to house hack your first property, you know that at the time I made that video, I was under contract. I signed that contract on November 17th. So that was the start day, and I didn't end up closing until February 13th. So it was 89 days when it really should have taken around 30. There are a couple of reasons for that I want to share with you guys, as you may run into some of the same issues as a new real estate investor. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so this is a 2,500 square foot duplex. It's an up-down duplex. It has 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom in both of the units, separate laundry, separate entrances, etc. And I knew that I wanted to use an FHA loan to house hack some type of multifamily, something 2 to 4 units where I could live in one unit and rent out the others and use that rental income to pay the mortgage. I also identified a couple of neighborhoods that I thought were in the path of growth, that I could afford to move into, that were close to downtown, and that I thought would be a good fit, as I was thinking about using some of those units for Airbnb as well. So I wanted to make sure we're somewhere close to the airport, close to downtown, close to food, just a general area that a lot of people would want to come into and stay for a weekend or for a business trip. It took me a long time to find this property. There are not a lot of multifamily units in those neighborhoods that I was looking for, and every single time one came on the market, it was like it was gone in less than a day. And so I knew that I had to keep looking every single day and that I had to move quickly. And so the first thing I did to prepare was I went ahead and got pre-approved by my lender so that I could have a pre-approval letter to show any sellers, proving to them that I could actually purchase the house and get a loan on it. That way they would be more likely to work with me. 2 days before I found this property, I actually offered on another duplex that was slightly outside of the neighborhood that I wanted to live in. But again, I had been searching for so long, I was getting a little antsy. And that offer, now that I look back on it, luckily got rejected. The seller went with someone else. So after I got rejected, I was feeling a little bit down on myself, and I went on Zillow and refreshed my duplex search, which I had been doing pretty much like multiple times every single day. And what I found was that a new duplex had come on the market in one of the neighborhoods that I really wanted to move into, and it had been posted just 17 minutes prior. So I immediately called the seller. I set up a time to meet her the next morning. We walked the property, I asked her different questions, etc. The interesting thing about this property is that the sellers were actually rehabbing it themselves. They purchase one house a year and they flip it and they sell it, and that's how they make their living. And so the listing was actually a coming soon listing rather than being available right away, which is why instead of setting up for a 30-day closing initially, we set the closing date for January 3rd. So that meant we were going from November 17th to January 3rd to give them enough time to finish rehabbing the house. And then once it was all said and done, I still had time to do my inspections, to do my due diligence, and make sure that everything was good to go before we actually went ahead and closed on the property. The house was beautiful. If you guys want to see a full tour of it, you can check out this video here. I was immediately not only in love with the house, I know they say don't fall in love with the property, but I also knew that was a wonderful investment. The purchase price was set fairly, there were comps in the neighborhood, and I knew that I could get the rent I needed in order to reduce my living expenses while house hacking. Some people say that if you're gonna house hack, you should be able to live for free, and while I do think that is a wonderful opportunity if you can manage it, I think the main thing is to reduce your living expenses in order to get into a property, live there, build equity and wealth in that property, and you're still not paying rent to someone else, you're paying down your own mortgage. So while rent from one unit doesn't cover the entire mortgage, it covers enough of the mortgage that I've drastically reduced my living expenses, and I'm basically paying myself much less rent than I would be paying someone else if I lived in their property. One tip for all my newbies out there is, before you go to a property, be ready to offer on the spot. I say run your numbers the night before so you know what you can offer and what would be a good deal for you. Get to the appointment maybe 30 minutes early so you can drive around the neighborhood and make sure that you like it. But when you're with that seller, that is the best time to lock in an offer. And I knew that other investors would be coming after this property. And so once we were done with the walkthrough, we were standing outside in front of the house, and I just went ahead and I just made an offer. I had my pre-approval letter already in hand from my lender to show the seller that I could actually afford the price that I was offering, and I ended up offering $6,000 below the asking price. We settled on $5,000 below, and both agreed to pay our own closing costs. Okay, so why an 89-day closing? So like I said, reason number one was that the sellers weren't actually done rehabbing the house, and so they needed time to finish that, as well as time for me after they were finished to do all of my due diligence and get ready for closing. But the second reason, which extended the closing from January 3rd to February 13th, was a huge hurdle, and it was the fact that I had a non-occupying cosigner. So what that means is that although I had all of the money for my down payment, for my 3-month emergency fund, all the money for the closing costs, I had been saving up that money for all of my years through college, through my first couple of years out of college while I was working and learning about real estate investing, so that when I wanted to get a property, I could. But I had my parents co-sign for me on the loan just to boost my debt to income ratio so that I could qualify for a larger property. So my parents put down no money into this deal. They just co-signed for me to help me qualify for the loan, which is something that I think a lot of young people who are making their first purchase are probably going to do something of that sort. Because my parents were not occupying the home and they were co-signers, it took my required down payment from 3.5% to 25%. And that was only because it was a duplex. If it was a single family home and I still had that non-occupying cosigner, would have been good to go, 3.5%. But my lender found kind of like a subsection within a subsection in the FHA guidelines that says for anything over 1 unit, so 2 to 4 units using an FHA loan, if you have a non-occupying cosigner, you have to put down as if you're purchasing an investment property, not an owner occupied. So that takes your down payment from 3.5% to 25%. Obviously, I did not want to do that. One of the biggest advantages of house hacking and living in a property that's multiple units is that you can still put down 3.5% with an FHA loan. And so I was not prepared to put down 25%, and I had to figure out how to solve that problem. I've got a much more in-depth video about that because it was a pretty long process, and you can see that video here. But basically, we had to make this home qualify as a single family residence for the FHA underwriters. I'll also share with you guys that I used down payment assistance from the state of Oklahoma in order to purchase this property. So while I had enough money for the down payment, I actually got the 3.5% down payment gifted to me from the state of Oklahoma so that I could keep that money in my pocket and use it for something else. It was a really simple process. I didn't have to do any extra work. I just told my lender that I wanted to use this program. He took care of everything, submitting the documents for me, and when I arrived at the closing table, the check from the state of Oklahoma for my 3.5% was already there. It's not something that I have to pay back, and I only had to have a slightly higher interest rate in order to use that gift. And when I ran my numbers with that slightly higher interest rate, it still met my ROI requirement, and it was a wonderful deal for me to be able to keep 3.5% of the purchase price in my pocket and still start out with just a tad bit of equity in the property. And that was it. After the sellers finished rehabbing the home, I did my inspections, I did my due diligence, we got the home classified as a single family residence. Everything worked out, and if you guys want to see a tour of what the property looks like, you can check out this video here. Let me know what you think, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I appreciate you guys watching.